When you date the ghost from the ring. Well, she gave me a blowjob. She gave me some fucking head. Blowjob. She gave me some head, maybe.
Anal. Faggot!
And then what happens, even the poo-poo comes out. The other poo-poo's out, and then they eat the poo-poo.
Well, that certainly was a repugnant intro.
분기반장은 잘할 수 있어.
Damn right, gotta give the people what they want, and what they want is episode 128 of Radio Free Innsmouth. Another twofer. 2 bands. Again. 2 death metal bands doing some more death metal stuff. I don't know. We have Crypticus and Horrendous. So 2 bands with an us at the end that both kind of use Swedish death metal of the early 90s as a starting template to create some interesting stuff. If you haven't heard of Crypticus, you should have, because they're really good, or I guess he's really good. Patrick, the Crypticus guy, essentially a one-man band. He just hires drummers every now and then. They were part of kind of a little mini renaissance of older school sounding death metal in the early 2000s, centered around Razorback Records. Even within that, the scope of that, it's mostly about 3 bands from then. Hooded Menace, Acid Witch, who I already did an episode on, and then Crypticus. That's kind of the beginning of this little mini renaissance. Then you get like Claws.
I want to use my claws. Jesus!
Which is actually a Lasse from Hooded Menace side project band, and Horrific, which is the solo project of the guitarist from Acid Witch, and then like Skeletal Spectre, also known as Roga Johansson, band number 47. A whole shit ton of bands that got Electrocutioner in them. The Decrepitaph, Festered, Father Befouled, Ghoul Gotha, and Coffination Guy. He's been in a shitload of bands, usually as a drummer. But Acid Witch, Hooded Menace, and Crypticus stick out because they were both semi-established as demo-level bands in the underground before joining up with Razorback Records roughly around the same time. If you don't know about Razorback, at this point in time, they'd moved on from doing really weird grindcore releases like reissuing all the Catasexual Urge Motivation stuff and whatnot into the realm of taking on very specific horror movie concepts. So like Hooded Menace, they come in, they play Doom Death, and it's like, okay, you guys get to be the La Ataque de los Muertos Sin Ojos, Tombs of the Blind Dead guys, and sing about that kind of stuff. Acid Witch kind of already had their spooky, morbid, humorous Halloween concept, so they just get to run with that. And then Crypticus, well, they come in from, it's just he. He comes in with a lot of like literary horror influences, so there's a lot of H.P. Lovecraft, a lot of like Ramsey Campbell, Joe R. Lansdale stuff floating around in there, in addition to sort of like a 1930s affectation reminiscent of Bela Lugosi speeches in various Ed Wood movies.
That I will show the world that I can be its master. I will perfect my own race of people. A race of atomic supermen which will conquer the world. Hold the string! Hold the string! A mistake is made.
Actually, that last little soliloquy there, the pull the string part, gave its name to Patrick from Crypticus's old podcast, Pull the String, which was kind of 15-minute long, comedic, metal review, absurdist humor segments. Gee, does that sound like it might have influenced anything?
그리고 진짜 제가 해보고 싶은 게
He even had a goofy little co-host named Klagu, who totally wasn't just him doing a silly voice and then overdubbing it later. Just kind of how like co-host Chan over there.
안녕하세요, 트와이스 지효입니다.
Totally isn't a random combination of Korean and Japanese language dialogue snippets edited together to make incomprehensible gibberish, which I then interact with in a very Han Solo and Chewbacca style fashion.
안녕, 나는 총무부장이야.
I'm just kidding. Of course you're real.
It's still real to me, damn it!
And in my imagination, in my mind, I believed it.
But yeah, take that concept and then combine it with the Fenris audio commentaries for the old Dark Throne albums.
And what the hell is this riff? This is what I was talking about from the first song. It's like this emotional escalation of the fast riffs from Bloodfire Death from Battery. This should never have been done.
Combine that with a whole bunch of autism, and you essentially have RFI, so thanks to Patrick and Fenris for that, and also thanks to them for doing some great music. Obviously, Dark Throne is great. They're well recognized. Crypticus, however, is also great, as I mentioned earlier, kind of coming out of the Swedish death metal template, but he's got a whole bevy of influences besides that, as well as an uncanny knack for some very unpredictable and occult songwriting. Look, there's a pledge to Jangzer. And we have the Swedish buzzsaw, but it's considerably tighter than is normal for the genre, allowing for a higher degree of technicality in the riffage. So this part's cool because it's a very long build-up, and you know from my episode on the Chasm, I love long, interesting build-ups in my death metal bands. Lots of little tricky things going on with the guitar work there. But this is almost like some kind of weird like gore polka riff here. I like this a lot. And then watch what it goes into. Almost kind of black metal melodic type stuff. So that's a very cool thing that this band does. He's playing some really technical stuff. It has that old school feeling to it, but the actual content of the riffs, despite the vaguely Swedish guitar tone, it's really all his own voice. This song, the title track on They Called Me Mad, features what might be my favorite guitar riff of all time. And it also features a very long build-up with a couple different guitar layers going on. That weird little kind of dissonant lead guitar with those nasty groove riffs going on under it. Really love the guitar sound on this album. He actually produced a lot of stuff for Razorback. He did the production on that first Acid Witch album I love so much. Nice little transition riff. Here's a very stop-starty, galloping kind of riff. But this is all building up to that big, massive riff I mentioned earlier. I promise. So here comes the build-up. And here, this is like a conductor working the orchestra, just flowing his hands out to the sides there, bringing the metal back in very slowly over these spooky choirs, which gives us the greatest riff of all time. I defy you to find a better one. This is absolutely the greatest riff of all time, and what makes it even greater is if we get in a little bit of that action, we can see the nice little counterpoint he sets up to it later in the song with this riff, with of course some spooky choirs in the background. But it's just all very well thought out how all these parts kind of lead into each other. Because this is obviously a bit of a transition riff, and it's going into another variation on the same sort of melodic idea as you heard in that main big riff. The tighter guitar sound than would normally be seen in this sort of Swedish-style death metal gives it a much more angular and harsh feeling, and it lets him do really kind of weird, spooky, dissonant stuff like this. Lots of jumping between strings, really good atmospheric keyboards. I'm thinking that's why Billy Nocera signed him, because it has a very horror movie feel to it. With the creepy keyboards and melodies somewhat reminiscent of old European horror movies. And utilization of samples, where it doesn't even really matter that you can't understand exactly what the guy's saying. It's more just about the atmosphere. And the fact that you can half hear the words, I think, actually adds to the overall effect. Oh, and nice solos too there. I don't know. Hopefully, just hearing that's enough to get you into Crypticus. That's from my favorite album of his second album, They Called Me Mad, which it is, a bunch of individual songs, but they all are faded into each other. They all kind of run together to form an impressive, massive work. And then later on, he started doing what he called horror grind mixtapes, wherein it would be one 17-minute long song composed of 30 to 45 second long snippets that all blend into each other. Obviously, those are incredibly complex, and it would take too long to play one of those to the degree where you could figure out what was going on. But check those out. Check out all the Crypticus stuff. It's awesome.
이번에 처음으로 우리 트와이스 멤버들 다 같이 여행 온
That's right, we do have another band on this episode. That band being Horrendous, who also pull heavily from some of the older Swedish death metal tropes and kind of do their own thing with it. Rather than being on Razorback, these guys were signed by Dark Descent from Colorado Springs. And they're slightly even more Swedish sounding than Crypticus is, but both bands have a penchant for little micro riff segments that are interchangeable and used to link together larger concepts. And this riff is another one of those best riff of all time kind of riffs. That guitar sound is pure Dismember worship, and I love it. This is off their first demo, which later was released as an EP by Dark Descent, which is great because it's produced perfectly. Might as well just be a full-length album if it wasn't so damn short. But yeah, their first full-length follows much in that same vein while adding a bit more spooky melody to it. Where they really got good for me is their second album, which is still just as barbaric at times, but also gets very progressive and interesting. This is my favorite song off of it. It's called Weeping Relics, a little bit of a gourmet reference perhaps. They're doing that signature sort of weird Swedish death metal burping noise with the guitar that you can make by kind of palm muting on and off really quick while you're detuned and playing with a HM2 pedal. But if you get a little bit farther into the song, that same sort of stop-starty riff comes back, but he's added in a little section at the end there, that da-na-na-na-na-na, which is presaging a farther development into the song. Right now it's just a little riff chunk, but then they start lengthening it out. They've moved away from that weird burping kind of riff. Nice vocals too, I like these. Sometimes he sounds like Van Drunen, sometimes he sounds like Sandstrom, good stuff. Layer on some lead guitars into that. And normally this would be kind of like the climax of the song, this just weird little riff here, but that same lead keeps going and it ties us into a very doomy melodic section. The main downtuned riff going on underneath the leads, very much in the mold of Goblin or whoever did the soundtrack to Lucio Fulci's The Beyond. So I'm all over that. Nice little Bill Ward-esque fill there too. A lot of different sorts of vocalizations going on. Clean ones, shouts. Not really any singing, more just deathly stuff, which fits very well for the album. That kind of meanders between super brutal Swedish death metal and more melodic stuff, even very progressive stuff. So that second album is or however the fuck you say it, I don't know, just look it up, you'll find it. The second one. It's got an awesome cover, I have a giant poster flag of it up in my bedroom. And unfortunately, that second album is the peak of their career for me, and it's actually the last one that I enjoy at all. Their later albums actually got them quite a bit more fame in the underground, but personally they don't hold my interest at all, so sorry. But Crypticus is always good. And that early Horrendous stuff is great. So if you get the chance, like, check them out. If you have decent taste, you will be impressed.
See ya. That's it. Bye-bye.
楽しかった。It was very fun. But marginalized, not good smell. Yes. So ちょっと sick. Never. I never tried. Vaginal smell. No. Never.
There's Secret Prophet.